Listeners, we are going to have an intimate session today because instead of having a couple hundred registrants for our summer, for our podcast, looks like we have a smaller group, which in some ways is actually nicer because I might be able to answer specific questions from the group. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank the foundation for allowing me to have this opportunity to talk about a relevant topics of psychology and then having the interest allowing me to share my expertise and my personal experience. I'm always thankful of Angela for guiding this talk. She's always given me great suggestions. And lastly, but more importantly, the people today supporting me, Zach, the information specialist, and Tim, who's our newcomer. He's going to be helping me out, hopefully, with these podcasts in the next few months and down the road. So with that in mind, one of the things I would love to do today is let Zach know in the chat if you're interested in coming on live and asking your questions. Now, I may not be able to get to everybody, but if you're interested, please put that in the chat and Zach will go through that and maybe we can get you on today audio wise so that we actually have a discussion, because my tendency is to be a professor and lecture and just talk about a lot of things in one direction. And as I know, that is not the best way to actually learn anything. It's the discussion, it's the personal parts of all this that makes it work for us. And so if you're interested, please let us know in the chat section that you're willing to come on and ask your questions. So today, the title of our talk is aimed in improving our mindset, and it's a very broad topic. There's a lot of different things that can go under that auspice. And so I am going to talk a different aspect of it. And again, feel free to interject with your comments in below. So here's my first question. Do you struggle with negative attitude or pessimism or some aspect of psychological frustration every day with your spinal cord injury? So that's my first question for you in the chat. Yes, no. Do you struggle with some aspect of psychological? Now, I know we all struggle with the physical part, and we'll get to that. But does the psychology of it, waking up and looking at the world, is it there every day? Or are there days you actually don't have those issues? So yes and no. I have frustration or I don't. And please let me know as we go through the chat. So one of the things I will talk about today was that I have been injured. Wow, I mean, is it 35 years now? And there's some of you who are on this panel right now who's been injured as long as I have. I would have to say that I probably was never clinically depressed throughout most of my life as a person with a disability. In talking to my friend Juan, and hopefully he's on today, I really hit a wall this spring. A lot of things, and if you saw my last podcast, I briefly mentioned it that there's a lot of variables that happen. My primary caregiver, my main caregiver, my wife, who's sitting actually right next to me right now, helping me out with this podcast, with the only exception that I think she's going to fall asleep because she hears these stories so much, she just thinks these are boring anyway. So But so she was sick, which threw me into a chaotic loop. So here's my second question. How many of you have your family member as your primary caregiver? So she got sick, she went to the hospital and etc. And I was just in a tailspin of trying to figure out, what kind of support. Now you would think after 35 years, I would have figured out that I need to have one of them, a main support system figured out. And that is one of the areas in life. They said that if you have enough support, not just with people with disabilities, but just in general, your life is a lot better. Your quality of life is significantly better. And so I am trying to see if I can see the answers of. So my second question was, do any one of you have your family member as a primary caregiver? So yes, I'm having, yes, for now, living with a sister from Amy, and Milene, if I pronounced that right, she says yes on that part as well. So send me for a tail loop. And then once she recovered, we took the opportunity for her to go home to see family members. And again, I thought I had everything set up. And the reality is that I did not realize how much she did the details. Because for once in a long time, I was responsible for taking out the garbage, and not physically taken out, but I was in charge of the puppies, feeding the puppies, things that I never think of. Now, I didn't even worry about cleaning the house. Trust me, there probably was dust everywhere, and the plants probably started dying because I didn't think these are more important things. But so coming back to what I was talking about was that, I went through a funk. I literally started to lose weight, could not eat. And I said to myself, wow, I truly am going through this depressive episode that never had gone through about my disability. Now, many of you may be on antidepressants. Some of you may have sought therapy when you are depressed, which is great, because those are the first two interventions. I'm not talking about just having a bad day. We all have bad days. But when you get to a point when you're losing weight and you can't sleep and you just are not in the right mindset, you need help. And research shows that the combination of medication and therapy is the quickest way of getting out of the funk. Strangely, it's like that plumber that never fixes their own plumbing. And it's like that carpenter that doesn't fix their own house. I think psychologists are similar in both. Although I knew I was in a funk, I didn't go get antidepressants and I didn't go through therapy. I thought about it. And in retrospect, I probably should have, because why should I go through this suffering for the few months that I did? I do feel I'm on my way out of it. Went on vacation with the family. It was good and bad. When you go on vacation with your families, it's never perfect. When it's, I mean, beyond your extended family. I started eating better. I think I must have gained at least 5 pounds. And I started sleeping better. So all those symptoms that I would have said that are depressive symptoms started going out of the way. So the aim for a better mindset. Yeah, I'm here to tell you how to do it, but sometimes it's not a perfect scenario. And I am going to be, I am embarrassed a little bit to say, look, I am not perfect either. I didn't make the right decisions, I think, at the time. I should, those shoulds. Yeah, I hate using the word shoulds, but I could have sought help, and I could have maybe had some medication to get me out of the funk for the couple. Now, granted, I did still go to work and do the things in general. I could have done better. one of the things I talked about in the paragraph that I talked about in today's is that the medical model, and some of you have written questions about the medical model, all they want to do is get to a point where you're not having biological issues, meaning they want to reduce your pain, or they want you to have the ability to not have a medical issue, not other than your disability. I mean, that obviously, as you and I know, that neurologically, we just can't change that. Well, and when I was rereading some of these articles in preparation today's talk, that is so true. What do we do when we go to a doctor? The reason we go to a doctor is because either we're sick or we go to a rehab, something because you need a new wheelchair, some type of. Most of us don't ever go to a clinic or a physician or any of these rehabs to say, how do I go get my life to a point of quality of life that's actually better? How, no one goes to that. I mean, when's the last time have I gone to a rehab and says, my life is okay, I don't have pain, I don't have this, I don't have that, but I like to make it better. And that is one of the areas, in talking to many of my friends who are psychologists, who unfortunately got older and or passed away, told me that life needs to have more joy. And so that is just that's beyond having quality of life. That is just sustaining medically. Now, being 34 years, I have a lot of medical issues. And in many articles says, look, pain, I have pain. How many of you have chronic pain? Okay. I have chronic pain. Okay. Sometimes, some days are better. How many of you have energy issues, lethargy? You just don't have the energy to do the things. And I can see that 20 years ago, when I was an assistant professor, I was doing so much more than what I am doing now. So here's my first question. How many of you have pain, chronic pain right now in the chat? That you have to deal with every day. Okay, so John says, yes, he has a lot of pain. Okay. And Janine supported lack of energy. I don't have the energy to do what I used to do. Okay. I literally, being able to push up on my chair to give me relief on my butt, or, now I rely on my tilt. Karen says, yeah, I have every day. And Amy says 56, can't get my energy level back to pre-accident. Well, you know what? You probably won't be able to get that up to pre-accident, Amy, but hopefully we can sustain some energy level. So the medical model wants to get you to some level where you're not having pain and lethargy, and that's hard. But another model, which is a biopsychosocial model, says, look, I want you to get to somewhere where you're performing awesome, well-being. What is your well-being? What is your, in some of the articles, they call it psychological flourishing. Okay. So I'm going to go down through a list, a few questions and statements, and say, look, here's the areas that I've seen in my life that makes my life better and more successful. And maybe allow me to go on vacations. Okay, so exercise helps. Absolutely, we got to exercise help, Janine. So well-being, what do you need to do to have great well-being? Well, one of the things I wrote in my notes was, and I'm biased now, being a professor, being in academics, well-being, occupation, doing something that you truly enjoy, but getting paid for it, so that you don't have to rely on possibly government assistance, etc. Now, many of us, unfortunately, have to be there and have pain that they can't have an occupation. But if you are physically able and you don't have the pain, go back to school. Find a way to go back to school. Um, Research does show that most of us spinal cord injury are actually quite educated. Many of us get our college degrees. The problem is going from having a degree to having an occupation that makes sense to you. The system doesn't make it make sense, because if you get a job, then you're off all your uh, potential assistance, but you have to make enough so that you don't rely on any of it. So occupation is one. When I'm saying one, I don't mean rank order. I'm just meaning, so how many of you have an opportunity to work full time and even part time, at least doing something you enjoy? So 2, having meaningful relationships. Now, these are, it could be with your spouse, could be your friends, people that you enjoy being around. Now, I had an opportunity, I'm not going to read the questions yet from the ones you specifically, but relationships are complex. And even without the disability, it's complicated. Trust me. I have privileges in 28 states, and I see people from Maine to Utah to Texas, and most of the time it's relationship issues. Now, when you tack on the disability, when you tack on them being your caregiver, now you just made that complex relationship even worse, because now you got multiple areas to have to worry about and to communicate. So so how many of you are right now married or have a relationship that's meaningful? If you don't, that is another area that you need to help. So first area is get to school if you can, find an occupation. Second thing is now find other peers that either are with spinal cord injury or have relationships with other able-bodied individuals that are meaningful. My third, control of daily life. Wow, that is a tough one for us. Now, I've always said that everything is relative, right? If you're a quad, you wish you were a para. And if you're a para individual with paraplegia or individual quadriplegia, if you're a paraplegia, individual with paraplegia, then you wish you were an able-bodied person. So everything is sort of on this. And if you're a C5, you wish you were a C6. And if you're a T1, so everything is sort of, you wish you always have, a little bit more than what you have. As a quadriplegic like myself, it is extremely difficult to have any sense of control in your life. I mean, from an opening a door to losing your driving, which that was one of the biggest areas of my life when I lost that independence. There's really very little control physically. What ends up happening is you end up trying to have control in your mind. Can you control the things that you're thinking, doing? And that's where I would say many of us who are quadriplegic have to go to, being able to control. And one of the registrants, and I'm not sure if you're on today. I was amazed in reviewing the registration of, there's an individual that is on us that indicated that they are bedbound almost 90% of the time, but yet the individual had this great attitude about what life is about. And I'm going to say I'm rarely in bed as if I don't have to. I hate being in bed. I feel a little more dependent when I'm in bed, so I avoid going to bed as much as I can. The problem with that type of lifestyle, you develop a sore and it takes forever to heal. I have another friend in Florida that says just, he says, man, your skin gets thinner and everything. just gets worse down bottom when you have all these years of sitting on these butt cheeks. So
Hey, Dr. John, one of
yes.
the comments, this may be a good time to address, if, regards to independence. Someone said, having to rely on another human to meet basic physiological needs like toileting is degrading.
Yes, yes. Toileting is probably one of the hardest part of when I had my injury in the beginning, and they were just going through after feeling the shock of being paralyzed and stuff, and they were teaching us digital stim. And I said in my head, I'm like, what do you want me to do? You want me to stick what, where, and do what? And then you wanted me to teach that to someone else to do that to you? I was like, wow, my life is a mess. Now, obviously, I use probably stronger words than that, but that whole bowel routine, digital stim, there was one point in my desire to avoid this digital stim thing that I even got one of these adaptive devices where it looks like a hook, plastic hook, where you can do your own digital stim. I'm not sure. Let me know if you ever use one of these things once out there, so that I was trying to do it myself, so that I wouldn't have to ask someone else to do it. And yeah, I'm gonna have to say to you, get over it as soon as you can, man, because no matter how much you and I talk about it, it's a biological need. And so now, if you hire the right people, they're compassionate, you don't feel as much as guilty in asking those questions. But if you hire the wrong people, and unfortunately, hiring people at this point and during the post-pandemic or pandemic, you may not have a choice. There's some people who belong in caregiving field, and there's many of you. And tell me if you ever had someone that you just said, you don't belong in this field. In your head, obviously, because you can't say that to them because they're taking care of you. So yeah, getting over your ability to, and when you interview people for your job, you need to be upfront. You need to tell them right upfront what you require of them. Hiring them and then trying to slowly get them acclimated it's a harder process to do. So thank you, Zach, for asking that question. And so yes, Janine says, yeah, I have to support you on that, Janine. I opted for a colostomy as well. And I'm not telling you guys to go get one. That is a major surgery, but it will be a point that you may have to evaluate what you're willing to do and what you are not willing to do. So there's a lot of pluses and negatives to having a colostomy. Another area that of what psychological well-being is hope. Now, hope for what? Now make sure I'm here with make very clear. You have to have hope in life, meaning you have to have things ahead of you that you're aspiring to do or think. But the hope cannot be the fact that you're going to walk again. Make sure I'm clear. You cannot sit there and hope that you're going to wake up like I did for the first 2 or 3 years of my life. I'll tell you, every day I went to bed thinking I'll wake up to this nightmare. But that never changed. I'm still disabled. So the hope has to be in other areas of your life. For me, early on in my life, I was hopeful because I wanted to have a career. I wanted to have an education. I wanted to have relationships. Now, my hope is more having joy in my life, and maybe doing a little more traveling. I think one of our registrants today, it does a travel blog. So I'm going to have to look that person up and see how they travel and what kind of disability issues they run into, because that is one area I'm not really good at. So I'm hoping to learn a little bit more about that. peer interactions, have to have friends with spinal cord injury. If you don't have them, you got to find someone. Peer support is really important. Right before I went on vacation, I called my friend Juan, and he was already down at Nag's Head, and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" So just being able to share and just commiserate at times and talk through each other and help support each other. So peer interaction. So I've talked about occupation, meaningful relationship, um, peer interactions, and these are so if you're not good in any of these areas, see, those are the things that I would talk to about person with spinal cord injury, because if they don't usually show up on my doorstep unless they're taking or depressed or anxious or something's going wrong in their life. So so these are the areas I would say, look, you need to get better at. A problem solving skills. Now, there's two types of coping based on one researcher: emotion focused and problem focused. You need to be a good problem focused person. Now, any of you who travel, that's a huge part of traveling, solving problems. But in general, you just need to be able to find ways to, because everyday life has problems. Now, you're not going to be able to solve all of them, but you have to have some ability to have problem solving. I was reading one article and they said, well, quality of life it's associated with someone who's intellectually capable of problem solving. Again, if you don't have that skill, you need to learn it. If you have that skill, use that to your advantage. So that is just well-being issues. How to have a positive well-being, occupation, meaningful life, control your life. And how do you do that? Someone's going to ask, well, how do I do these things? Well, if you can't do them on your own by reading and self-help books and all, and going on the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation and reading these things on your own, my second option would be to talk to a peer, support people, talk to friends that are in a spinal cord, and they may help guide you. If that doesn't work, then the third level would be talk to someone like me, talk to a psychologist that can help you problem solve these areas. Preferably someone who's in rehab, because not all psychologists are the same. And you have to have some level of understanding about spinal cord injury rehabilitation to be I believe, in my opinion, to have empathy in your situation and our situation. The other area is what they call psychological flourishing. So it's a little bit different from well-being, but how do you flourish as psychologically? And they said being married, viewing oneself favorably. And when I read that, I was like, is that narcissism? But it's more confidence that you are doing well in your career, doing well with things you have. So having a good health record. Now, you and I know that we struggle with a lot of medical issues, UTIs, bowel issues, sores, skin sores, osteoporosis, and it takes a lot of energy to stay on top of all these medical issues. And as you get older, some of us have more than others, and I don't know how to get around it. I am searching many of the literature to try to figure ways to stay healthy as we get older. One of the things I don't want to hopefully get to a point where I'm suffering as I get older. That is one of my biggest fear. As we get older and older, we just have more and more issues, and that is a fear of mine down the road. How many of you are like me, going through a lot of medical issues already, and it makes it hard to do any of these things? For example, I'll give you an example: pain. Pain is probably one area that is so debilitating that it affects everything you do in life. Now, literature research shows that it's not the pain intensity that actually predicts your quality of life. It's what they call pain interference or psychological interference. Okay, pain interference. I'm like, what's pain interference? I have never heard that lately. So when I read up on it, it's not that you can't tolerate the pain, but it's when pain interferes with your life that it impedes your ability to work. It impedes your ability to have relationships. It impedes your ability to travel, to drive. So that pain interference is actually the best predictor of quality of life. So, and not predictor, but the part of that is more associated with your quality of life. So what does that mean? Okay, so it's not that you can't adjust to the pain. It's when it impedes your everyday life, like work, like friends, and that becomes a psychological problem. How many of you on this panel right now has a lot of pain, like myself here? Okay. So Karen says yes, yes. All right. Let me talk just briefly about personality. Now, in order to be a positively, Noel says severe pain. So to get through the spinal cord injury, there's a thing called resilience. What does that mean? So resilient people are low neurotics, meaning they don't get anxious. They're very calm people. They're usually, now based on this article, they're no on neuroticism, high on extroversion, meaning you're very social. Okay, so you're low neurotic, high on social, and high on conscientious, meaning you're aware of what other people needs and your needs, and you're able to float around and understand people. So again, what personalities allow you to adjust to having a spinal cord injury? If you're low on anxiety and neuroticism, high on extroversion, meaning you're a people person. So that means it's a little harder if you're an introvert. Conscientious, meaning I'm aware of what other people's needs are. That tends to make it easier for you to get along with people. When you're around people who are low on conscientiousness, they tend to step on your feet a lot. They tend to get in your way a lot. They tend to, and I'm going to say all of you know someone who is low conscientious and tend to intrude in a way that you don't want them to. So anybody that has a question, please post it. I'm going to go through a few of the Excel questions right now.
We have a question that came in that is relevant to, being able to be outgoing, that came in over the chat. Do new quads feel afraid of going back to dating?
Well, the easy answer would be absolutely. I cannot imagine having this level of injury and not be afraid. I mean, think of it. You have to get past driving, going to the date. You have to get past probably the biggest part, intimacy. How do you work around that? How do you work around external catheters? How do you work around indwelling catheters? That's from a male perspective. Well, actually, that's from a female perspective. It's almost the same thing as well. Communication. Anybody that tells you that their injury and their quadriplegic has not impacted their way of seeing the world and dating, I would say they're in denial. It impacts in some way, some fashion that they had to adjust. Now, some of you and I and others may have done it easier. And when I reviewed back in my younger years and post-injury at 19, 20, there's a level of stupidity maybe and ignorance at that age. And so you don't recognize some things yet than I do when I was a little older. I think that comes with age. You know, when you're young, 18, 19, 20, 21, I mean, there's a reason why those are the age groups that we have people in the military, because you need a sense of, you don't have a sense of fear to run into battle, you know. So yeah, that as a quadriplegic, you need to feel confident about where you are. I do think though, there's a part of you that has to say, look, I have a lot to offer. And what is that? What part of you brings something into the relationship? Because if you're always taking and they're always giving, it's not going to work out. So there's some level of give and take that's going to have to happen. So did I answer your question, Zach, or did I answer that question?
The person who posted the question said, thank you for your honesty.
Okay.
Anyone who has any questions, or feel free to put them in. Oh, someone just put in another question. Oh, this is a complicated question. So this may be one you want to come back to, but can you help me get my life in order dating? I really don't want to start all over again. I am an incomplete C5, C6, C7 quad in a manual chair. I was on a dating site. I'm 42 now. This was 12 years ago.
First of all, I'm not sure if I can get your life together. But if you were in therapy with someone, they probably can help guide you a little bit in the process. I really don't want to start over again. Well, I'm not sure if you don't start over again, where would you start? You can't start in the middle. That's the point of starting. You have to start somewhere. And the reality is that you are different now. You know, again, as a reference, you're in a manual chair. I'm in an electric chair. I'd be like, yeah, I'm in a manual chair. That's so much different than being in an electric chair. But that everything's relative, right? Versus someone who can walk and ambulate. But so C5, C7, manual chair. I guess I'm seeing so many pluses already. You have to start over. So no matter where, you're going to have to start over. I'm 42 now. My bias has always been, you need to be around people who understand medical issues a little easier. That is compassionate emotion. So dating sites are so hard because the focus of the dating is purely on physical. Can I say that? So much of dating sites, when you're swiping left, swiping right, is based on, do you look good? Now, a friend of mine down in Georgia, Clint Cook, he's a quadriplegic, but he's a very functional quadriplegic. He says, look, I go in there saying, this is what I offer. And when I'm on a dating site, I put it out there right away. You don't want to be a surprise. Another suggestion, he says, make sure you are clean, which is weird. It wasn't weird, but it's very logical. He says, make sure you're clean. Make sure your personal body hygiene, because we got catheters and super pubics. He says, make sure you don't smell. I was like, wow, Clint, you're right. So his recommendation is, if you're going to go on a website, you're going to get used to rejection. But two, remember, it's about physical attraction in a lot of ways. So you're going to want to really let them know your level of capabilities. And three, be clean. You know, have good hygiene. So that's some of my suggestions, Elaine. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, so I apologize. Let's see, my chair is old, so many secondary injuries, absolutely. Secondary problems. Yeah, well, they didn't want to get it vaccinated. Well, that's a whole nother area of talking. You got a lot on your plate, so but it sounds like you're doing it, you're trying it, you have a boyfriend. Communicate your needs, try to make it work. I hope I answered your question there. Okay. The web sucked. Yes, I do agree with you. Dating websites are difficult. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to go through some of these questions on these pre-registration. James says, having loving support parents with financial resources makes sense. And that you're right. Our life is not cheap. There are so many things that you need to buy in order to survive well. So luckily, James, you have good support parents and financial capabilities. So here's the person I was talking about, Dennis. Dennis says that he's 90% bedbound, but he says he's a great attitude and does life coaching a little bit, and so good for you, Dennis. And he has a purpose and meaning in life, which is part of that well-being and psychological flourishing. You gotta have a reason to get up, because if you're just getting up just to watch Netflix, man, that's. I think I mentioned one of the things in one of my podcasts. I was during this pandemic, I was watching so much Netflix, I was getting so bored at times that I decided to go back to college full time. Now that's weird, all right? You're a professor. I already have 2 masters and a doctorate and a postdoctorate, and here I'm going back to school for another full-time, degree, master's degree in something else. And you would think I'm crazy, but I needed something to give me focus, and it gave me something to stop watching Netflix. Once you one of those series, how many of you got stuck in one of those series and you just watch hours and hours of a show? By the time you're done with one of those series, if you weren't paralyzed, you felt like you're paralyzed. Am I correct to say that? Let me know if you binge watch anything, in this last year. So Pat writes that her husband is struggling. He's depressed. It's complicated. There's a lot of anxiety and it's frustrating. Yeah. Pat, it's, when you see your partner struggling, it is difficult. And the thing I would suggest is give them opportunities, give the person options to hopefully find their way out of the hole that they're in. Let them know how his depression that can be cured possibly is affecting you. Maybe they'll be motivated to seek treatment. Okay, so that's what I would say, Pat, to try to do is communicate your concerns, give them options. It's like, hey, honey, here's what's happening with you. It's impacting me, and here's some things we can do. So Peter talked about having a low dose of antidepressants for seasonal affect disorder, which I think many of us who live up north have. We get a lot less energy during the winter, spring. So here's the thing for Peter. Peter writes that he had an accident due to horseback riding. So you have outdoor activities you love, and since the accident, I make a half-hearted attempt to get moving, or losing a few pounds, or can't seem to make exercise part of my weekly schedule. Peter, I'm going to say to you, look, if you like the outdoors, you need to be outdoors. Okay, staying inside, staying in bed, not doing anything, it just makes it worse. So now you probably could still, depends on what your level of injury, Peter. There are ways to still ride horses, but if you can't do that and you love outdoors, then you got to find a way to be outdoors. Even if you're just sitting outdoors. I have a patient out in Nebraska, I think. Love the outdoors, love the flowers. She looks at everything from the window. And I said, look, while you're in session with me, why don't you take a walk and sit outside? And just sitting outside, being in the outdoor, changed everything for her. She's just like, I'm not sure why I don't go sit outside. If I can sit indoors, why can't I sit outdoors on a nice day? So Peter, find a way to get outdoors, find a way because that's your natural personality. So being disabled doesn't mean you can't be outdoors and do something. So, all right, Amy, consider therapeutic writing. There you go. And Yes, riding injury here as well, and clawing my way back to the. I like the way you said that, Amy. Clawing my way. There's no easy way to do this. So clawing your way back is probably the best descriptive of our life. Okay, I'd be poo-pooing it if I told you this was easy. I struggle with every day trying to making sure I'm doing the right thing. Ellen indicated that I struggle with having as much free time and physical energy each day since I was injured, creating stress in my marriage in different ways. Yeah, routine. When your routine takes 2.5 hours in the morning, when your routine takes hours at night, you have to put that in consideration. And so many times when I talk to someone, they're like, "Oh, can you meet me at 9 o'clock?" No, I cannot meet you at 9 o'clock because I'm still getting down with my routine. Or my department chair, what time can you teach? Well, everybody wants to teach 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, to be honest. Why? You get it done. You have your day done. I can't teach till at least 11, 12, 1 o'clock. So my department loves me because I never take the slots that other people want, which is Tuesday, Thursday teaching, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So I'm a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 to 1 teacher because by the time I'm done with my routine, so that's part of your adjustment. I'm a morning person, but I really don't have a lot of more obligated responsibility to later on in the day. I see my friend and colleague Linda, Nurse Linda, is on for a little bit. Thanks for listening, Nurse Linda. I know a lot of her listeners tune into her regularly on every month. She has a lot of great medical advice. And so her perspectives so much is more on medical adaptations, accommodations, and adjustments, whereas as you've noticed that most of mine are more from the psychological perspective. So coming out of this today's talk, you have to control your medical issues. If you have a lot of pain, if you have a lot of medical, it's hard to live well. It's hard to have psychological well-being. I was looking at articles where it says quadriplegics who are having intermittent catheterization have less poor quality of life. Well, hello, yeah, it's a lot easier if you're doing it on your own than if you have to ask someone else to do it. I mean, that's pure logic, but sometimes we as scientists have to do a research to say what's logical. I could have saved them a lot of time and money to prove that, but I do the same thing. I sometimes do research on things that seems really stupid and mundane at times. A lot of people says, look, relationship with family was a key in my success. Another Laura says, I will be moving on to my own apartment in mid-July. So Laura, good job being independent. Friends, family, and sunshine. Now that's oh man, when I lived in Florida, those of you who are living in the South, man, I wish I was down there in the winter because I hate the North in the cold. But my family's up here. In theory, I guess I could move now because some people have, unfortunately, my father has passed away. But yeah, I love the South. I love the sunshine. So maybe someday I'll get to go back down. Loving, supportive, financial parent. Hey, who's that said that? James, ask your parents if they would adopt me. Okay. Okay, let's see. What one person said divorce was the best thing. Well, I wouldn't say that's the best thing for everybody, but if it's toxic and it's killing you, that doesn't help. Exercise. Now, I just signed up for some more physical therapy, occupational therapy. I realized I was becoming a slug. So that is good. Social life. You got to get out. You got to meet people that's not disabled. It's funny though, when I'm out at one of these festivals stuff, there's very few people with disabilities out there like me. It is odd. It is weird at times, but you know what? You just got to go out there and engage. Moved in with daughter-in-law and son-in-law. So that tells me you have a great daughter who wants to help. Trying new things. When I see my hat, I was at Ocean City, Maryland. not Maryland, Ocean City, New Jersey. Okay, try new things. Well, I love beef jerky. So there's a store. I tried a couple weird things like kangaroo and bought some crickets. How many of you would eat crickets? Yes or no on this? If you would try crickets, if they're not actually not too bad tasting, a little crunchy.
While people are thinking about crickets, I just wanted to let everyone know that the next session for Dr. John is going to be on July 6th at 2 o'clock. If you haven't registered yet, I did put the link in the chat, and you can also get it from our website.
Okay, thanks, Zach. And everyone, thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate all the interaction. When it's a nice small group like this, it's actually pretty nice because I can look at the questions and be a little more focused. When it's big, like 200 and 150 people, it gets a little lost sometimes. So thank you again. Tell your friends, and I'll see you right after 4th of July on our next podcast. Okay, thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.